And my beautiful friends, welcome. Anna, Alchemist of the Arts here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the energies leading up to this full moon eclipse, the first of this eclipse season, which takes place on the 17th or 18th of September, depending on where in the world you are. I think the energy at this time has been super intense for so many of us. It has been weird all year. And by weird, it feels like there is tangible change coming. Things are changing, and it could have felt all year, to be quite honest with you, that things have been breaking away, breaking down, kind of falling apart in many ways. And this can be quite literal within our own lives, or more just as things perhaps transition away from us, leave our lives in whatever form that may be, as we're kind of making space for the new. And it's very, very interesting because it feels like we're waiting for this change. And at this point, we've probably already accepted that these changes are taking place, that these things are kind of leaving. Some of them, it could be really, really difficult watching, as we have to learn to re-identify with ourselves, learn to re-identify who we are within the world, within the things that we're doing, within the ways that we're showing up for other people, within our communities, our families, within all kinds of different dynamics. There are many changes that have already happened, but what that has almost led us away from is this very firm foundation in what we're here to do, who we're here to be. And there's this sense of intangibility, things held off in the distance, perhaps. And I think this is going to begin the tipping point where we begin to see and feel some of those changes becoming more real within our life, where we've gotten used to some of them. But now we're perhaps realizing, perhaps with a sense of peace or acceptance, that right now we might not have all the answers, and we might not have a full plan. I know I've been saying this all year, as to what we're supposed to be doing and where we're supposed to be going. The path ahead might look very unclear. But that change feels imminent. It feels on the tip of something just waiting to kind of descend. And we can see this play out across the global stage, within all manner of different situations. This year has been wild. And, you know, as these old structures, old ways of doing things on a personal level and on a wider scale begin to change, there is a period of, I suppose, turbulence as we see them transition and the new ways become established. There is always going to be that level of instability as we reestablish ourselves or how it is that we're going to do things. And again, all of the work we've been doing, everything that I've been talking about through all of these different messages that I've done this year, they run concurrently. Just because we're having a new full moon now, it doesn't mean that you suddenly might feel a drastic change in energies. This is something that has been progressively changing over the course of many, many years now. But I feel like in particular, this full moon is giving us a very, very powerful window into the past self, an opportunity to reflect over the past self with a new level of clarity, honesty, and quite truthfully, a realness that we need, a realness in perspective. Now, in other cases, there might be things that change around us as other people have their own realizations, because each of us are affected by these energies differently. That can trigger changes within our lives personally, as the places where we meet and interchange and our paths cross suddenly might go in opposite directions, or we're just finding ourselves called upon a different path, which can lead us away from certain things. I do feel very, very much right now there is something calling us to explore new opportunities. And it's interesting because this waiting for change, in the Northern Hemisphere at least, we're just going into autumn. And you can feel it in the air. We had such a cold week weather-wise in the past week, and now the weather is back to being very much like summer again. But there is that slight chill in the mornings, regardless of how warm it gets in the day. You start noticing the dew upon you know, the little rose hips and things and the hedgerows, and you can see that these changes are occurring. Autumn is probably one of the most dramatic displays of change that we all experience because it's so visual. But at this point, we need to rely on all of our senses, including our intuition, to really connect with what changes we need to action or to create or to flow with within our own lives. There has been an opportunity over this year to connect with different parts of ourselves, with different elements, and the energies associated with those elements, with different places, to have new experiences, even if those are within very similar circles. And within those opportunities, there's room for growth. There are catalysts for growth, catalysts for change. It's seeds that have been planted. And whilst we might be in that process of planting new seeds, we're also seeing what's coming to light, what has begun to grow, what has begun to stir within us and actually is starting to take root. So all of this work, everything that we've been doing, even though it might feel like so much has changed, there is growth. And I do feel like for so many, there is going to be this steady sort of flourish of new beginnings that start to emerge within our lives as we do start to take those steps or have the awakening that we need to see these changes in action moving forwards, where we might be going. I don't think we're going to get the full picture, like a nice clean roadmap or a blueprint telling us exactly where we're going to go. But we're going to begin to see some of those pathways ahead. And it's really important, just as I mentioned, you can begin to feel the change in the season within nature. It's learning to recognize those subtle signs within us and around us that things are changing. And we don't often take much notice of those, but I think it's time to celebrate what actually has already changed, the powerful positive changes we have been able to make, and notice where there might be things that are very, very gently calling to our attention, that might want to change, that might need our reflection or our focus for a period of time. And I think, again, I know I've been saying this all year, but this is a really, really important moment and practice within the day, within your week at some point, to be able to disconnect a little bit, to turn the attention away from the complete carnival that is around us all the time. Because as you know, these energies intensify, that gets louder. And I've really noticed that within the global stage this year, everything's got louder, everything is amplified, everything wants our attention, and everything can become a distraction. There's a fly, excuse me. So it's really important at this time that we learn to minimize these distractions, even if it is just for the briefest period, to allow ourselves to reconnect with ourselves, with our truth, with our own inner voice, with our own inner guidance, with our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Because, just to repeat myself, the exterior environment has just become all the more loud, and it wants our focus and attention. So it really needs to become a practice, just even for small periods, to turn away from all of that chaos and the distractions, and remember that, you know, sometimes the process of change can be quite messy, it can be quite loud, it can be confusing, it can be things that we don't expect. But also for us to be within our strength, within our clarity, even though we might not feel like we have total clarity, to clear our energy, to reconnect, to center, to really come back to ourselves so that we can make the best decision within that chaos. We really need to rebuild that relationship with ourselves at the core of who we are. So the next thing I think is really important to discuss is how these changes can impact everybody. And that will all be different. There is no way of simply explaining this is going to happen. It's different for all of us. And as these changes take place, as we find ourselves walking down new paths or looking at new opportunities and really working with tuning into that depth of our realist self, I wouldn't be surprised if many of us undergo the different layers of ego death, which can be really, really difficult. These are the realizations, if you've not heard that term before, it's the realization that we have created perhaps an ego attachment or identity, something like that, to something external. And as we go through these changes, there is this process of disconnecting from some of those attachments, from some of those identifications that actually aren't the truest core of who we are. They're exterior constructs. And whilst those are very valid and actually quite vital in some ways on our path of personal growth, of self-development, and understanding exactly who we are, we can't get away from them entirely, in terms of we still have to show up and function. We're doing this work on the job. We are going through these processes on the job. None of us are, or very few of us, are away on idyllic retreats in a very calm, centered Zen place constantly. We're all being tested. And the test is to do this work on the job. And the test is to go with the flow whilst also being really honest with ourselves about what does need to change. And through that process comes the peace, comes the clarity, comes the realization from having those sometimes difficult conversations with ourselves. And through that self-honesty, we are able to take responsibility for who we are and who we are becoming in a very powerful and meaningful way. It is empowering in that we realize that we have a say in who we are and how we show up in this world, regardless of what is going on around us. And I think that is something that so many of us forget. I do it myself. And that's the wake up call. And to realize that, one of the big things for me is that your service work, the light that you bring to the world, the impact that you have on those around you, is not measured by how you show up on a social media program. It's not measured in that way. It's how you go about the day to day. It's how you handle the things that are going on in your life. It's how you interact with those around you. There is all different levels to this. And I think we've become, again, so distracted by the shiny, pretty object, by the big platforms, that we forget the importance of ourselves, our work, who we're being on an individual level, not just for ourselves, but for the collective. That is why these messages are created, because each thing that all of us do ripples out into the collective. And there is this very, very strong emphasis, and has been for such a long time, on the sort of status and celebrity-like culture and how to present aspects of self upon these platforms in order to garner some sort of accreditation or status, even though it might be real what you're sharing. And who you are in the day-to-day, who we're being, how we show up for those we love, is just as important. So this is not to diminish anybody's contribution to life, anybody's contribution to the collective. And within that, also accepting that, we at an individual level can do a great deal of benefit by being able to diffuse some of these very challenging situations and high intensity energies by being calm, by remembering who we are in those moments, by not allowing ourselves to slip back into older versions of ourselves, or to be triggered or to be challenged. And sometimes we all get triggered, and again, it's how we deal with it in the moment or in the hereafter that is sometimes the lesson. Sometimes it's not about living a life that is completely devoid of challenges or problems or looks perfect from the outside. It's about taking those challenges on, head on, whilst retaining who we are at the depths of our being. And that will look different for everybody. And we won't always get it right. We are supposed to be challenged, from my perspective, in order to achieve some of this growth, or at least deal with some of those challenges, to overcome those problems, a bit like the hero's journey, to get to where we're meant to be. That said, You know, the mindset that we have when approaching these situations is very, very important. And I think at this time right now, because all of this energy is in Pisces and we're, you know, shifting into sort of Aquarian energy, there's a lot of high emotions. So really do what you need to do. Stay grounded. Try and retain who you are at your core, no matter what you're encountering. The situations, the circumstances that are running outside of you do not define your worth or your value or who you are as a person. We all have the power to grow, to change, and to guide ourselves through these changes to become the different versions of who we are. But we are also our shadow. And it is the acceptance of all of ourselves and then choosing how we're going to cope with the day-to-day of life that really is a big part of the work that we're all here to do at this time. So I'm going to leave this here. We're going to go into the rooms. We'll get these now. Again, this can be a little bit noisy as I do them, but let's get some runes for the week ahead and let's see what we've got going on. We have answers. This is all that higher communication, higher guidance, and this to me very, very strongly is saying to reconnect, to tune in with our own intuition, to some people read cards, some people read runes, some people meditate, some people journal, some people go into nature, some people have a wise counsel that they can sit and communicate with, whatever it is, whatever your practice may be. And if you don't have one, this could be a great time to try and see what feels right for you. And we only get there through exploring the different things that are available. I've just given a list of about 5 that you could try if you've never tried before. Go to that place and try and find that calm moment to do that inner communication, to listen to the core of your being, to your intuition, to your gut, to whatever is coming through. Write that down. And I think we'll find that often, sometimes the advice that we need, the best guidance comes from that inner communication. This rune answers also connects very, very deeply to our breath, to breathing. And this again is just reinforcing that message that it is time to ground, to really reconnect, to go back to that place within and to be able to calm ourselves in the presence of what might be very, very stressful, difficult, or challenging situations. Reconnect with the breath and really bring yourself back to center before dealing with that stressful situation. And I think the ability to take that pause, to take that moment, to be in presence with yourself will help all of us to show up in a slightly different way. All of us could really benefit sometimes. I think every human being on earth would benefit if we all just stopped and paused before we reacted. I know that probably sounds really idyllic. But we as individuals can make that change. And rather than reacting in a said way, take a breath. Just take a breath. Maybe take 2, maybe take 10, and then respond in a more meaningful, thoughtful way. And again, I say this without judgment because we all get triggered. But that's the message that's coming through. We'll get 2 more. Okay. We had Pethro, and it came out in this position. And this will always, always, always say to me personally as a reader in this position that it is time to nurture yourself, to refill your own cup, but also to take a really valuable inventory. This feels really valuable of what you're putting into your cup to nurture yourself, because not all of it may actually be nurturing. Not all of it may be beneficial. There could be things that we're doing to refuel ourselves or to recharge ourselves in some kind of a way actually that might be unhealthy patterns at this time. And this is just a reminder that as we change, as we grow, as the world changes, as we evolve, it's really important that we have those assessments of what we're doing, of how they make us feel, of whether or not that's actually working for us, or whether it's just something that we've been told that we need to do in a particular way because, you know, perhaps other people do it that way. So this is where we bring that power and that focus back to ourselves in order to create those changes and, you know, refill our own cups so that we can be recharged on our own terms without draining others. And one more. What have we got here? Okay, we've got Yarkan, Bacano, depending on whichever spelling that some people prefer to use. This talks about our growth. This is speaking to me very much about the sustainability of some of the things that we have been tending to. Now, the visualization that I'm getting is that as you, especially at this time of year, as you sow a field with seeds, as you start plowing the soil, you might plant 100 seeds and maybe 50 of them will grow. For some of us, there could be so many different things that we're trying to focus on, so many things that we're trying to do to nurture, when perhaps actually we need to simplify a little bit and really bring the focus back. And again, this goes to removing some of those distractions, clearing away some of what actually we no longer wish to grow within our lives. There is a sense of simplification, of focusing energy in a more targeted and more specific way to really nurture what needs or what is most important for us to grow right now. Because there are so many other things calling to our attention. Our energy might be feeling very drained. We might just be feeling very fatigued or just a bit flat. And in those times, we need to be really conscious of what we're investing in to kind of prevent the burnout from happening, or just the scattering of our efforts. So again, focus on what you need, bring your energy back to you through those reflections, through that communication, reassess what's really important, and then focus the energy on growing that. It's quite clear and a nice progression through the runes there on how we can work with those energies for this week. I am going to leave this here as a reminder. If anyone wants to check out the work I've been doing over on Instagram, feel free. I do offer personal readings, and those are available on my Etsy and website. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it brought some value to you. Wishing you a really, really happy full moon. And I will see you again in a minute. All my love.